I was sitting in the library when I suddenly heard heavy footsteps coming from upstairs. I rushed to my son's room, my hands trembling as I opened the door. And when I entered, I found him staring at the corner. I asked, "What are you looking at?" "Papa, it's my friend. She's playing with me." A chill gripped my chest, and my heart nearly stopped. Then, she's here. I can feel her. My name is Alex, and I'm in my 40s. I work as a civil engineer for a major company, spending years of my life constructing bridges and buildings. But I never imagined that one day I would find myself trying to uncover the secrets of a house that didn't seem meant for the living alone. My life was fairly stable. Alongside my wife, Emily, our 10-year-old daughter, Sarah, and our little boy, John, who was just learning to walk. We were an ordinary family seeking stability and happiness. But everything changed when we moved into that old house on the outskirts of the city. I was sitting in the living room, trying to relax after a long day at work. The new house was spacious, much larger than our previous apartment in the city. It was an opportunity we couldn't pass up, moving to this quiet place where my son could grow up in a better environment. But something about it made me uneasy from the very first day. Perhaps it was the overwhelming silence that blanketed the house, or the strange looks the neighbors gave us whenever we passed by. I didn't know then that this house would change our lives forever. It all started with a laugh. I was in the kitchen sipping my morning coffee when I heard a faint sound coming from the baby monitor. It was a child's giggle, soft, innocent. I glanced at the small screen expecting to see John playing in his crib, but he was fast asleep. There was no other sound in the house. Emily was in the garden, and Sarah was at school. Cold sweat trickled down my forehead. Maybe it was just interference in the device. That's what I told myself to stay calm. But the strange occurrences didn't stop there. That night, I woke up to a faint sound like a window slowly creaking open. I jumped out of bed, grabbing a baseball bat I kept nearby just in case. When I entered John's room, I found the window wide open, even though I was certain I had locked it before bed. The curtains swayed with the cold night air creeping into the room. I shut the window cautiously, trying to steady my nerves. Maybe I had forgotten to lock it, or perhaps John had somehow managed to open it. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. In the following days, I noticed that John spent a lot of time staring at a particular corner of his room. He would smile and laugh as if interacting with someone. I watched from a distance, but I saw nothing. One day I asked him what he was looking at. He was too young to speak clearly, but he managed to say, "Daddy, she's my friend. She plays with me." I didn't know what to think. Maybe it was just his imagination, or maybe he had an imaginary friend like many children do. But as time passed, I started to feel that something else was happening. One night, while I was sitting in the study, I heard heavy footsteps from the upper floor. My wife was asleep beside me, and Sarah was in her room. I assumed John had woken up, but when I went upstairs, I found him sleeping peacefully. The footsteps stopped the moment I arrived, as if whoever was there had been waiting for me. A deep sense of unease settled over me, but I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind. Things became even more unsettling when Emily's friend Catherine visited us. We were sitting in the garden enjoying the calm evening when Catherine suddenly stopped mid-conversation, staring at the upstairs window. A look of shock crossed her face. In a trembling voice, she asked, "Who is that little girl waving at me from the window?" I turned to look but saw nothing, just the curtains swaying gently in the breeze. I told her there was no little girl in the house, that John was our only child here, but she insisted, "No, I saw her clearly. A small girl in a white dress. She was looking right at me and waving." A chill ran down my spine. Emily looked at me, worry in her eyes, while Sarah tried to mask her fear. "Maybe it was just a trick of the light," I said, trying to keep the situation calm. But Catherine shakes her head firmly. "No, it was a child. I saw her." At that moment, we all heard the sound of a window creaking open from the upper floor. Our eyes darted to the window, but it remained closed. A sudden gust of cold air made the atmosphere even more eerie. Emily clutched my hand tightly, and Sarah whispered, "Daddy, are there ghosts in this house?" I had no answer. All I knew was that things were spiraling out of control. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I climbed the stairs with heavy steps, trying to appear calm for my family's sake. When I entered John's room, I found him sleeping peacefully again. But the window was slightly ajar, despite me being certain I had locked it before heading to the garden. The curtains swayed slowly. The sight sent a deep sense of dread through me. When I returned downstairs, I found that Catherine had left in a hurry, bidding us a tense good night before vanishing into the night. Emily turned to me and said, "We need to find a new house. This place, it's not normal." I knew she was right, but how was I supposed to explain to John and Sarah that we had to leave so soon after moving in? That night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, I heard a soft whisper coming from John's room. A delicate murmur, like the voice of a little girl. My pulse quickened. I got up and hurried to his room. He was sitting up in his crib staring at the same corner where he always smiled. But this time, he was waving, like he was saying goodbye to someone. I swallowed hard and asked, "John, who are you talking to?" He looked at me innocently and said, "She's sad. She doesn't want us to leave." After what John said, I felt true fear. I began to tremble, but I tried to hide it. Then, I decided to research the history of the house. I went to visit the elderly neighbor, Rachel, who had lived in the house next door for over 40 years. When I asked her about the house, she looked at me with a sorrowful expression and said, "You don't know the story of this place, do you?" Rachel told me that the house had been inhabited by a small family 20 years ago. They had a young daughter named Mary, who was only 5 years old. One day, Mary vanished suddenly and was never found. The family left shortly after, abandoning the house for years. Since then, everyone who lived there reported hearing strange sounds or seeing shadows moving at night. Some even claimed to have seen a little girl waving from the window. A chill ran through my veins. All the strange events we had experienced were starting to make sense. But I didn't know what to do next. Should we leave the house, or was it all just old superstitions? On the last night, I was sitting in John's room, trying to calm him down after a sudden fit of crying. He kept staring at the same corner, reaching out with his tiny hand as if trying to touch someone. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper behind me, a soft murmur, like the voice of a little girl. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. Then I heard the whisper again. this time clearer. Daddy! My heart nearly stopped. It wasn't John who called me. The whisper came from elsewhere in the room. I looked at John. He was smiling, as if he heard it too. In that moment, I realized we were not alone in this house. I decided we would leave in the morning. I didn't know if the house was haunted or if Mary's spirit was still searching for something, but I wasn't willing to stay and find out. I gathered my family and told them we were moving somewhere else. I didn't explain the real reason, but I could tell they understood. As we were leaving the house, I looked up at the upstairs window one last time. I saw a small shadow standing behind the glass, waving at me. A tear slipped down my cheek, but I shut the door firmly, knowing we would never return. That was the end of our story in the new house. But I know that something still lingers there. Maybe Mary is still searching for her family, or maybe she was trying to tell us something, but I will never know the truth. All I know is that some places hold secrets that should never be discovered. This was Alex's story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Have a horror story of your own? Drop it in the comments below. Your story might just be the next one we share.